Hi friends. Welcome back to our channel, the place where your English learning journey becomes simple, relaxing, and part of your everyday life. If you're just starting out or if you want to build confidence and improve your basic vocabulary, you're in the right place. On this channel, we share short and easy English stories to help you learn real words, common phrases, and simple sentences. These stories are perfect for beginners who want to listen daily, repeat after the speaker, and feel more comfortable using English in everyday situations. Whether you're at home, walking, studying, or getting ready for bed, you can listen, learn, and grow, step by step. Let's learn English together, one story at a time.
Today we have a heartwarming story about new beginnings. Meet Leo, a young man who just graduated from college. Instead of moving back home, Leo decides to take a big step toward independence by living with his college roommate. It's a story about learning to live on your own, facing small challenges, and finding joy in everyday life. Whether you're a student just starting out or thinking about moving out for the first time, this story might feel very familiar. So grab your headphones, relax, and let's step into Leo's world. After graduation, Leo stood on the steps of his university with a smile on his face. He had finally done it. 4 years of hard work, late nights, and coffee-filled mornings had paid off. He was ready for the next chapter of his life. Leo didn't want to move back home. He wanted to be independent. So he decided to move in with his best friend and college roommate, Ben. Ben had already found a small apartment in the city. It wasn't fancy, but it had everything they needed: a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and even a little balcony where they could sit and drink tea after work. Leo packed his things into 2 big suitcases and took the train to the city. When he arrived, Ben was waiting at the station with a big smile and 2 hot coffees. "Welcome home," Ben said, handing Leo a cup. The first few days were exciting. They went grocery shopping together, built furniture from cardboard boxes, and decorated the living room with posters and plants. At night, they watched old movies and talked about their dreams. Leo found a part-time job at a bookstore nearby. He liked the quiet and the smell of new books. Ben worked at a cafe just 2 blocks away. Every morning, they walked to work together, sharing jokes and making plans for the weekend. But life wasn't always easy. Sometimes the apartment got messy. Sometimes they argued about small things, like who forgot to do the dishes or who left the light on all night. Still, they always said sorry and laughed it off. Leo was learning how to live on his own, how to cook simple meals, how to budget money, and how to take care of himself. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. One night, as they sat on the balcony watching the city lights, Leo said, "You know, I was scared to leave home. But now I feel like I'm exactly where I should be." Ben smiled. "Me too." And in that moment, Leo knew that growing up wasn't just about graduation or getting a job. It was about the little things, like living with a friend, making mistakes, learning new things, and finding your own way. On the outside, everything looked great. He had a full-time job, a nice apartment, and a good roommate. He was learning new skills, saving money, and even going out with his coworkers sometimes. But inside, Leo was tired. Really tired. Each day felt like a race. Emails, meetings, deadlines. He didn't have much time to rest, and when he did, his mind wouldn't slow down. His weekends became shorter, his mornings heavier, and his smile a little dimmer. Even video games didn't feel fun anymore. One evening, after a long day at work, Leo came home, dropped his bag, and sat silently at the dinner table. Ben noticed something was off. "Long day?" Ben asked. Leo nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm just tired. All the time." Ben sat down across from him. "You've been working nonstop, Leo. Maybe it's time to take a break." Leo sighed. but I don't want to fall behind. Everyone else seems to be doing fine. Ben shook his head gently. You don't have to compare yourself to anyone. You're allowed to rest. That night, Leo couldn't sleep. He missed home. His family, the smell of his mother's cooking, the sound of his little brother laughing in the next room. He hadn't seen them in over a year. The next morning, he opened his laptop and booked a plane ticket, just for a week. When he arrived home, his mother hugged him tightly. She made his favorite meal, warm soup and rice with fried eggs. His father took time off to go hiking with him, just like they used to. His younger brother showed him all his drawings and even asked Leo to help with homework. Leo hadn't smiled like that in a long time. He slept in his old bed without alarms or meetings. For the first time in months, his heart felt light. During his trip, Leo realized something important. Taking care of yourself is not a weakness. It's part of growing up. When he returned to the city, he felt refreshed. At work, he asked his manager if he could change his schedule a little, fewer meetings on Mondays, a short break during the afternoon. His manager understood. He also started new habits, short walks in the park, putting his phone down before bed, and journaling every Sunday morning. Bit by bit, Leo felt stronger. He still had busy days. Some weeks were harder than others. But now he knew how to pause, breathe, and check in with himself. He learned that success doesn't mean being perfect all the time. It means learning to take care of your mind and body. One Sunday evening, as Leo sat on the balcony sipping warm tea, he looked out at the city lights. He smiled. He was still figuring things out, but that was okay. He was growing, healing, and finding balance. And that, too, was a part of his journey. The apartment had always felt full of sound, laughter, and late-night talks. Leo and Ben had shared the space for over a year now. They had their routine, grocery runs on Sundays, takeout on rainy nights, and tea on the balcony when work got too stressful. But one evening, as they were cleaning up after dinner, Ben cleared his throat. Hey, Leo, he said carefully. Can we talk for a second? Leo looked up from the sink. Sure. What's up? Ben sat down at the table. He looked nervous. I got offered a job, he began, in another city. It's a big step for me. More hours, better pay. Think, I'm going to take it. Leo froze, his hands still wet with soap. Oh, he said quietly. When would you leave? In a few weeks, Ben replied. I know it's sudden. I didn't plan for it to happen so fast. Leo nodded slowly. No, I get it. It's a great opportunity. I'm happy for you. And he meant it. But deep down, something ached. That night, Leo lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the empty half of the apartment. No more shared meals. No more casual jokes while folding laundry. No one to remind him to water the plants. For the first time since college, he would be living alone. The weeks passed quickly. Ben packed up boxes, sold some old furniture, and cleaned every corner of the apartment. On his last night, they sat on the balcony one more time. You're going to be fine, Ben said. Leo gave a small laugh. It's weird. I've always had someone around. College, roommates. Living alone feels different. Ben nodded. Yeah, but sometimes different is good. You'll make it your own. They hugged before Ben left the next morning. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt strangely quiet. Leo stood in the living room, looking around. The silence was loud. The first week alone was hard. The rooms felt too big. Meals felt too quiet. There was no one to laugh with about silly things. But slowly, Leo started building a new rhythm. He moved Ben's old desk into the corner and turned it into an art space. He began cooking new recipes. Some were awful, but others turned out great. He started keeping flowers on the table and played soft music in the evenings. And he realized something beautiful. He missed Ben, but he didn't feel lost. He was growing again, this time in a quieter, deeper way. Some evenings, he'd sit on the balcony with tea, still looking out at the city. Only now, it was just his space, his quiet, his thoughts. One night, he wrote in his journal, "Living alone doesn't mean being lonely. It means learning to be my own best company." And with that, Leo took a deep breath, smiled to himself, and leaned into this new chapter, stronger, braver, and more independent than ever before. It was early December, and the city was starting to sparkle. Lights hung across streets. Shop windows glowed with decorations. The air was cold but cheerful. Leo stood by his window, watching snowflakes fall softly onto the street below. It had been almost a year since he'd visited home. He missed his family, his mom's cooking, his dad's dry jokes, and his little brother's wild stories. So, he booked a ticket home for the holidays. The train ride was long but peaceful. Leo wore headphones and looked out the window, watching the city fade into trees and quiet towns. When he finally arrived at the station, his mom was already there, waving both arms and smiling wide. "Leo," she called. He dropped his bags and ran into her hug. At home, everything felt both the same and different. The hallway still smelled like fresh laundry. His old room still had posters on the wall. But his little brother was taller now, and the family dog had more white fur around its nose. Over dinner, they asked him questions about work, city life, and living alone. "You cook now?" his mom asked, raising an eyebrow. Leo laughed. "Sometimes. I made soup last week that didn't taste like socks. So I'm proud." His dad smiled. "You've grown up, son." At night, Leo sat in his old room, thinking. A year ago, he had been nervous, unsure, and scared to take the next step. Now, he had his own place. He paid his own bills. He'd faced loneliness and learned to be okay with quiet. He realized something as he sat there, wrapped in a blanket from home. He hadn't just left his childhood house. He had become his own person. The next day, he took his little brother out for hot chocolate. They walked through the park, snow crunching under their boots. "You're different now," his brother said. "More grown up." Leo looked at him and smiled. "Maybe, but I still don't know how to fold fitted sheets." They both laughed. The trip passed too quickly. On the morning Leo had to leave, his mom packed him a bag of snacks, and his dad slipped a note into his coat pocket. Back on the train, Leo opened it. "We're proud of you. Keep going. Love, Dad." He sat back, eyes a little wet but heart full. He was headed back to his apartment, his quiet balcony, and his new life. And even though the holidays were ending, Leo felt something warm inside. A deeper sense of who he was and where he was going. The holidays had come and gone. Leo was back in the city, back in his apartment, the one that now felt more like home. He was getting used to quiet mornings alone, making coffee while soft music played in the background. The snow had started to melt, and the cold was giving way to a softer breeze. Something about the new year felt open, like anything was possible. At work, things were busy but steady. One afternoon, while Leo was eating lunch at his desk, someone knocked gently on the frame of his cubicle. "Hey," said a familiar voice. He looked up. It was Ava. They hadn't talked much since before the holidays. But now she stood there with a friendly smile and 2 coffee cups in her hands. I brought an extra. Figured you could use a break. Leo smiled, surprised. Thanks. You're a mind reader. They sat together in the break room, sipping coffee and catching up. Ava talked about her trip to visit her grandparents. Leo shared stories from his time at home. They laughed more than he expected. After that, coffee breaks became a quiet routine. Once a week, sometimes more, they'd sit in the break room or go for a short walk after work. They didn't talk about big things at first, just movies, childhood memories, the worst meals they'd ever cooked. But slowly, the conversations grew deeper. One evening, Ava asked, "Do you like living alone?" Leo thought for a moment. At first, I hated it. I felt like I was just floating. But now, I think I like the quiet. I've learned to listen to myself more. Ava nodded. That makes sense. I live with 2 roommates. It's loud all the time. Sometimes I wish I had silence. Leo chuckled. Wanna trade apartments for a week? She laughed. Tempting. They were different in many ways. Ava was more outgoing, full of jokes and wild stories. Leo was quieter, more reflective. But something about their energy just worked. One Friday, Ava asked if he wanted to check out an art exhibit downtown. It's mostly photography, she said. City life, human moments. I thought of you. Leo paused, then smiled. I'd love that. That weekend, they spent hours walking through the gallery. Leo stood quietly in front of one photo. An old man sitting alone on a bench, pigeons at his feet, city lights behind him. Kind of reminds me of how I felt last fall, he said softly. Ava looked at him. You don't seem like that guy anymore. He nodded. I'm not. Afterward, they shared a simple dinner. Nothing fancy, just noodles and tea. But to Leo it felt special. When he got home that night, he stood by his window and looked out over the city lights. Something had shifted. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living, building connections, creating memories, growing into someone he liked being. And as for Ava? Well, maybe this was just the beginning. It was a chilly Saturday afternoon when Ava texted Leo. Hey, are you free today? There's this little street fair downtown. Food, music, and weird handmade candles. Want to come? Leo stared at the message and smiled. His fingers hovered over the screen. Yeah, sounds nice. What time? By 3 p.m., they were wandering through a maze of booths. People selling colorful scarves, tiny cakes, hot cider, and candles that smelled like everything from ocean rain to grandma's living room. Ava was wearing a thick green coat, her hair tucked under a knit hat. Leo had never seen her outside of work this relaxed. She was laughing at almost everything. The music, the signs, the guy juggling apples badly in the corner. Leo, quieter, just watched her sometimes. They grabbed warm pretzels and sat on a bench near the edge of the fair. Music played in the background. A kid ran past them holding a balloon. It all felt soft and simple. Ava turned to him. You're quiet today. Leo smiled. Just enjoying this. She looked at him for a moment. You know, I wasn't sure if you'd want to come. Why? You seem careful. Like you don't let people in easily. Leo looked down at his hands. Then nodded. I think I used to be afraid of being close to people because losing them hurts. Or because I didn't know who I was yet. But I'm learning. Ava didn't say anything right away. Just leaned back and let the wind blow across her face. I get that, she said softly. Me too. Later, as the sun began to set, They walked down a quieter street. The sky was turning pink, and the streetlights were just starting to flicker on. They stopped at a bookstore window. Ava pointed. "Look at that book, How to Find Yourself Without Running Away. That's so dramatic." Leo laughed. "Maybe we should both read it." "Maybe," she said. Then she looked at him. "Or maybe we just keep showing up for each other." There was a pause. Not an awkward one, but one full of quiet meaning. Leo felt something shift in the air. Something gentle. Not loud or sudden, just a warmth, a closeness. Before they said goodbye that night, Ava reached out and touched his arm. "I had a really nice time," she said. "Me too," Leo replied. As he walked back to his apartment, Leo didn't put in his headphones like he usually did. He didn't scroll through his phone or rush through the evening. He just walked and smiled. Not because anything huge had happened, but because something real had started. And sometimes, that's the most beautiful beginning of all. The message came out of nowhere. "Hey man, I'll be in the city this weekend. Want to catch up?" Leo stared at it for a second, his thumb hovering over reply. It had been months since Ben moved out. Months since they'd shared late-night ramen, movie marathons, and kitchen debates about whether hot dogs were sandwiches. Leo had missed him, but he'd also grown. Alone. Now, the idea of meeting up again stirred something unexpected, nervousness. "Still," Leo replied. "Absolutely. Just name the place." They met on a gray Sunday afternoon at a quiet coffee shop not far from Leo's apartment. Ben was already there, sitting at a small table by the window. He looked the same, but different. A little older. A little sharper. "Leo." Ben stood up, pulling him into a hug. "Man, it's so good to see you." They ordered their usual drinks. The first few minutes were full of small talk. Work, weather, traffic. But eventually, the silence between sips turned into something more real. "So," Ben said, stirring his coffee, "how's it been? Living alone, new job, new everything." Leo paused, then smiled. "Honestly? At first, it was tough, quiet, and weird, but I like it now. I think I'm learning who I am." Ben nodded. "Yeah, I get that. I've been going through the same thing. It's different not having someone around to talk to every night." Leo looked at him. "Do you miss it?" Ben shrugged. "Sometimes. I miss the comfort. But I think we both needed space to grow. And we have." They talked for over an hour about how things had changed, how they had changed. Ben mentioned a new coworker he was dating. Leo hesitated for a moment, then told him about Ava. Ben grinned. "Look at you. The quiet guy has a coffee date buddy now." Leo laughed, a little embarrassed. "It's still new, but it feels real." Ben looked at him for a second. "I'm proud of you, you know. You're not the same guy I moved in with. You're more settled. Braver." Leo felt something in his chest loosen. Maybe he didn't realize how much he needed to hear that. They walked out into the cold together, hands in pockets. "Let's not wait months next time," Ben said. "I miss our dumb jokes." "Me too," Leo said, smiling. As they said goodbye, Leo turned toward his apartment, the same place he once feared would be too quiet. Now, it felt full of memories, of growth, of quiet strength. It took Leo 3 tries to clean the kitchen. Not because it was dirty, he was just nervous. He wiped down the counters, reorganized the spice rack, lit a candle, blew it out, lit it again. Ava was coming over. Not just for a quick drop-off or a short coffee. She was coming for dinner. At his place. For the first time. He'd texted her earlier that week. "Wanna come by Saturday? I will cook. Or attempt to, anyway." She replied almost immediately. "You cooking? I have to see this." Now it was Saturday night. Leo had pasta on the stove, jazz playing softly, and 2 glasses waiting on the table. He wore a plain sweater, simple, but he hoped it looked thoughtful. The knock came at exactly 6:02 p.m. He opened the door. Ava stood there with a smile, holding a little plant in a clay pot. "For your place," she said, "so it feels less like a hotel and more like a home." Leo grinned. "Thanks. It's already better with you here." The evening was slow and easy. They ate, laughed, and talked about everything. Bad childhood haircuts, dreams they were too shy to say out loud, their weirdest fears. Later, they moved to the couch. The room was dim and cozy. They sipped tea and listened to the rain that had begun outside. Ava leaned her head on Leo's shoulder. He didn't move. For a while, neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. Because in that quiet moment, in a small apartment, in a city full of noise, 2 people had found something rare. Comfort, connection. Something real. When she left that night, Ava paused at the door. "Thanks for dinner," she said. "And for letting me in. In more ways than one." Leo just nodded, smiling gently. "Come by any time." As the door closed softly behind her, Leo looked around the room. The new plant sat on the windowsill. 2 cups rested on the table. The air still held a trace of her perfume. And for the first time since moving in, Leo didn't feel like he was alone in that apartment. He felt home. Leo received a simple email. He read it 3 times. "Leo, I'd like you to present your proposal to the department heads next Thursday. Let's chat tomorrow morning." His stomach tightened. He had been working on a small proposal, just an idea to streamline the way the company handled client feedback. It was clean, organized, and practical. But he never expected it to go anywhere, let alone land in front of directors. He texted Ava. "They want me to present my idea next week. I think I'm going to faint." Ava replied almost instantly. "You won't faint. You're going to crush it. Call me later. We'll practice if you want." The next few days were a blur of nerves and note cards. Leo practiced in front of his mirror, mumbling phrases like optimization and retention tracking, while trying not to look like a malfunctioning robot. Ava came over one night to help. "You're explaining too fast," she said gently. "Try talking to me like I'm a friend, not your boss." "You are my friend," Leo said. "Exactly. So breathe." They practiced again and again, with her playfully interrupting. "Wait, what does that word mean? Can you say that with less robot energy?" "Smile, Leo. Your idea's good." By the time Thursday rolled around, Leo wasn't totally calm, but he wasn't frozen either. That morning, he stood at the front of the conference room, heart pounding. The directors looked at him with polite interest. Emily gave him a supportive nod. He began. At first, his voice shook a little. But as he explained his ideas, he began to see heads nodding. One manager even leaned forward, scribbling notes. He found a rhythm, pausing to breathe, making eye contact, cracking a small joke about how he'd confused 2 charts in his first draft. People laughed. By the end of the 12-minute presentation, Leo felt like he'd crossed a tightrope without falling. As he finished, one of the department heads said, Well thought out. Thanks for taking initiative. Emily gave him a small thumbs up behind her coffee cup. That night, Leo and Ava sat on his couch, eating takeout noodles and watching a cheesy movie. He turned to her. I didn't think I could do it. She smiled. But you did. I think I'm starting to believe in myself a little more. She bumped her shoulder against his. Good. Because I already do. And just like that, Leo realized. Life wasn't about waiting to feel ready. It was about showing up, nervous, unsure, and doing it anyway. And every time he did, the world got a little bigger. Ava had always been calm, confident, and full of light. She told jokes with ease, always remembered everyone's coffee orders, and had a way of making people feel comfortable, even on their worst days. But tonight felt different. She had invited Leo over for dinner at her place. Her text had been simple. Your turn to be a guest. My place, Friday. 7 p.m. Don't bring flowers unless they're made of chocolate. Leo smiled when he read it. But now, standing outside her apartment door, he felt a quiet nervousness. It wasn't the same as when he'd cooked for her. This was different. This was her space. Her world. She opened the door with a smile, but her eyes looked tired. Hey, she said softly. Hey, Leo replied. Chocolate flowers secured. She laughed and let him in. Her apartment was small but warm, filled with soft light, cozy throws, a few stacks of books, and a bulletin board covered in photos and sticky notes. It smelled like roasted vegetables and rosemary. They ate dinner at her tiny kitchen table and talked about everything from terrible high school jobs to the weirdest dreams they'd ever had. But as the evening quieted, Leo noticed her falling into silence more often. Her eyes drifting. Her fingers fidgeting with her bracelet. He asked gently, You okay? Ava looked at him for a long moment, then stood up, walked to a shelf, and pulled down a photo in a silver frame. This is my brother, she said. His name's Mark. Leo got up and joined her. He passed away 3 years ago, she continued. Sudden heart condition. We didn't even know it existed in our family. She paused. He was my best friend. I haven't really told anyone at work. It always feels too heavy to bring into new places. But you're not just someone at work anymore. Leo didn't say anything at first. He just stood with her. Then, quietly, he reached out and took her hand. Thank you for telling me, he said. I'm really sorry, Ava. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she smiled through them. I still talk to him sometimes, you know? When I'm walking home. When something good happens. I just say it out loud. Like he's still listening. Leo nodded. I think he probably is. They stood there, hand in hand, in the quiet. No more words. No need for them. Later, they sat on her couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the flicker of a candle. Ava leaned her head on his shoulder. I don't usually let people in this far. Leo looked at her gently. Me neither. But I'm really glad you did. And in that small, quiet moment, without big declarations or dramatic music, something beautiful happened. Two hearts, both healing, started to trust each other more. Not because everything was easy, but because now they didn't have to carry it all alone. A week had passed since that quiet night at Ava's apartment, the night she told Leo about her brother, the night she let her walls down just a little more. And something had shifted. Not in a dramatic way. There were no sudden kisses in the rain or love songs playing in the background. But in the space between them, there was more trust. more stillness, more real. Leo could feel it in the way Ava smiled at him across the table during lunch breaks, in the way their conversations held longer pauses, not uncomfortable ones, but the kind where silence felt like understanding. One evening after a long workday, they met at a small park neither of them had been to before. It was quiet, just a few joggers, a couple walking their dog, birds settling in the trees as the sky turned pink. They sat on a bench, sipping iced tea. Leo stared ahead. You ever think about what comes next? Like, beyond all of this? Ava tilted her head. You mean after work, after this stage of life? He nodded. Yeah, I used to think I needed to have it all figured out by now. The job, the purpose, the 5-year plan. But lately, I'm not so sure. Ava smiled softly. Maybe figuring it out isn't the point. Maybe living through it is the point. Leo turned to her. How'd you get so wise? Grief, she said plainly. Loss makes you look at time differently. He reached over and took her hand. They sat like that for a while, watching as the sun dipped lower. Finally, Leo spoke again. I'm thinking of applying for a new position at work. A more creative role. It scares me, though. Ava looked at him. Do it scared. I think that's when you grow the most. He nodded. Yeah, I think I will. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. 1 month later, Leo got the job. It was a risk, and it meant longer hours and more responsibility. But it also meant learning something new, creating something that mattered. His days were fuller now, but in a good way, a grounded way. He and Ava still met for lunch, still spent weekends curled up on the couch or exploring bookstores or cooking terrible meals that somehow still tasted perfect. And on quiet evenings, sometimes they didn't even need to speak. Their story wasn't one of fireworks or drama. It was soft. It was steady. It was real. One evening, Leo stood in front of his mirror. Same mirror he once stood at practicing for his first big presentation. But this time, he wasn't rehearsing. He was just breathing. He looked around his apartment. Photos on the walls. Books stacked. A plant in the window, Ava's first gift to him. He walked into the kitchen, where Ava was making tea. She looked up. What are you thinking about? Leo smiled. About how far I've come. She handed him a cup. You really have. He paused, then added, I don't know what the future looks like. But I know I want to keep walking toward it, with you. Ava didn't say anything. She just smiled, reached over and held his hand. And in that moment, Leo knew. Life doesn't need to be perfect to feel whole. It just needs to be true. And that brings us to the end of Leo's story. From nervous beginnings to quiet growth, from new jobs to unexpected friendships, Leo showed us that life doesn't always unfold with loud victories or clear directions. Sometimes, it moves gently, with steady steps, small acts of courage, and the people who walk beside us. We hope you saw a bit of yourself in Leo, in his doubts, his dreams, his learning, and his heart. Thank you for being part of this journey. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little reminder that growth is possible, even in the quiet seasons.